Hi everyone, good afternoon. Thanks for being here. Let me start by introducing you to my friend Iriti, right? This is a person I met about 10 years back when I was looking for an image that perfectly, represents the irrationality of human beings, right? I found this image with a man with a chocolate in his hand and then kind of clearly concerned about his weight, right? And I couldn't help chuckle, but I've shown this image to like thousands of people across the world, right? Every time I find people laughing, shaking their head on the stupidity of human beings, right? But then several years back, again, I was on one such stage speaking to some college students, and I was telling them about my own incident, right, where I walked into Stephens College looking for an admission, and I was sitting in front of an HOD, the professor, and he was asking me questions. The first question he asked me was, tell me something about yourselves. A very simple question. But believe me, I've never heard that question ever in my life before. I had no idea what to say, so I mumbled, fumbled, said something, and then walked out of the room pretty embarrassed that I couldn't say something about myself. I promised myself that I'm going to prepare and be ready for such a question in the future. And 3 years later, I was sitting for a B school interview, and the professor asked me the same question again, right, which is, tell me something about yourself. And I wasn't ready then either. Right? I didn't know what to answer. And now I was angry, not just embarrassed, I was angry. I was cursing myself, how could I be so indisciplined, right? But while I was standing on this stage and narrating this incident, I realized that, you know what, this person may or may not be Iriti, but I am certainly Iriti, right? I am the epitome of irrationality. But I think it goes beyond him and me, right? I've been working on some really, harsh challenges like HIV mitigation, road safety, sanitation, and so on and so forth. Met thousands and thousands of people across the world, right? And I realized that all of us are Iritis. We are all just bundles of irrationalities. Every one of us are full of it. What our conscious brain tells us to do, the kind of planning we do, the kind of intents we have, the kind of awareness we have, is really inconsequential to how our non-conscious brain drives our behaviors. So we can lament about irrationality, but we have to understand that it's the non-conscious brain that's really driving our behavior. That's given. The only question now is whether you can influence your non-conscious brain, the brain that you're not even aware of. Can you influence it? Can you nudge it? Can you trigger it into doing things differently than what it would do naturally, right? So let me give you a stark example, right? We stay in Bombay. In Bombay, millions of people cross railway tracks every day, trespassing tracks to go from east to west and west to east. And very tragically, right, 10 people die every day on the tracks, hit by trains. 10 people every day. If you were to ask me, if you were to ask yourselves, if you were to ask the authorities, the reason is simple. People are stupid. People are stupid, they are careless, they are drunk, they are doped, they are trying to kill themselves, they are on their mobile phones, this, that, and whatever else, right? But when we started studying this problem, right, it's quite a shocker, right? It's a railway track. On that, only one thing moves, and that's a train. And train is no small particle. It makes a lot of sound. It's huge, right? And the track that you need to cross is like a few meters, 2 meters, 3 meters, and you're safe. And yet you get killed by it, and 10 times in a day. So when we investigated, we realized that there is actually a very fatal flaw in the human brain. And that flaw is that we haven't yet learned how to estimate speed of large, fast-moving objects. It's very simple, right? I mean, evolutionarily, we haven't seen big things move at big speed. Big things started moving at big speeds 100 years ago. Our brains have been developing for the last 10,000 years at least. So we underestimate that speed. We underestimate by 40, 50, 60% at times. So imagine a train that's coming at 100 miles an hour could look like coming at 60 miles an hour. You take a step, that fatal step, and you get hit. 10 people get hit. At least 1,000 people every day are getting a near miss. And millions of people are putting themselves on that track, fatally through the year. Now, having known this, the immediate thing that comes to mind is, let's go make people aware of the fact that trains are much faster than what they look. But none of this processing is happening consciously, right? People are non-consciously crossing the tracks. It's not they stand on the track, calculate the speed, and then take a step. So just telling them that trains are much faster than what they look is not going to change their behavior. So what do? What we did was draw these yellow lines on the tracks, right? So near trespassing points, some of these tracks were colored into bright yellow paint. The idea was to just change the reference of speed. So rather than the reference of speed being this big train, it's now about how quickly these yellow lines disappear under the train. It's like when you're sitting in a coach or a train, right? You look outside, everything looks nice and calm and simple, right? When you look down on the road or on the track, things start to look very, very speedy, very, very fast, right? That's just your reference of speed has changed. Now, this little yellow lines reduced death rates by 70% in Bombay. There are places where death rates came from 30 to 0 within a quarter. That's the power of our non-conscious brain. That's also a power of our ability to influence the non-conscious brain. None of these people who are crossing tracks in Bombay do even know that these yellow lines exist for them. They don't know. It just lies there. They're just benign lines which are saving lives of people, and people don't know that these are meant for them. So now to move to the theme for this event, right? Catalyze. So I was kind of beginning to think, are there yellow lines that we can draw in our own lives to make ourselves better, to drive personal growth, personal development, and so on and so forth. And I thought, I'll give you a few examples of where the possibilities are, and I'm sure if you explore within yourself, you'll find hundreds of such possibilities, right? So let's look at a few examples, right? So think of attention, right? This is something that everybody demands of you. I'm demanding of you right now that you attend to what I'm saying. Your parents, your teachers, managers, everybody is demanding attention. But believe you me, that our brains are way more designed for distraction than for attention. Our default state is distraction. Imagine walking into a jungle and not getting distracted when you hear a hissing sound or some rustling in the leaves, right? The next thing you're on the floor. So distraction is a protective instinct, right? And yet when we ask people, pay attention, it's almost like as if it's a choice. It's not a choice. The brain's designed for distraction. Now, can you nudge this brain to pay attention? Of course, you can kind of, be very intensely motivating, intensely creating fear, and so some people will start attending at least for some moment of time, right? But I say go doodle. Go doodle, that same doodling which invited a chalk missile on many of us in the class, right? When we're doodling and a teacher threw a missile at you, right? That same doodling, believe me, is meditative. It's a creative process. It opens your mind. It keeps your mind active. So no matter what anybody thinks, right? Just keep a pen and a paper near you when you're listening to a video or listening to a lecture like what I'm saying right now, or when you're listening to a teacher, right? Take your notes, but also doodle and see how attention starts to kind of build in your system. It's totally non-conscious. There's no conventional logic to it to begin with, right? Think another thing, right? Think daydreaming, right? One of the favorite things we do, by the way, right? 40% of our wake time, we actually are daydreaming. I can tell you right now, at least 70-80% of you have gone into daydream mode at least 10 times. Right? That's our favorite activity. Right? It's a beautiful thing, by the way. It's a beautiful thing, right? It's not like dreaming when we are sleeping, which is totally fantastical, totally uncontrolled. Daydreaming is actually a creative process. It's goal-driven, it's problem-solving oriented. So when you're kind of stuck and you're like, I can't think something nice, I can't find these goals and this environment very motivating, go daydream. Right now, teachers will tell you snap out of it, right? I'm telling teachers, go design environments, right? Design the spaces of nothingness, where you can absolutely do nothing. Pause and go daydream. At least you will constructively daydream rather than daydreaming when I'm speaking. Right? So it's at least that much more useful, right? There's so many curious facts about the human brain, right? Look at this, right? Again, human brain is designed for inhibition, which means it doesn't want to do anything which is abnormal. It only likes things which are familiar, well-known, doesn't want to go into unknown places. Why? Because again, same thing, it's protecting you. It's protecting you by not allowing you to do anything which is outside the normal. But then imagine students, us, right? Where will innovation come from? Innovation comes when we start to do things which are unknown, which are unfamiliar, right? Now, how do you tell this brain, you know what, forget all protection, forget all survival, and start giving me space for exploring the unknown, going into the wild territory and putting myself into risk? You can't do that. So what do? Start doing small little abnormalities, right? Like start walking backward, for instance. Start drawing pictures upside down. Start doing your other hand writing, drawing pictures with the reverse on, so to say, right? There's just subtle ways of letting your brain know that, you know what, I'm comfortable with the idea of abnormal, that this abnormality is not going to kill me, this abnormality is good for me, right? And by, the brain will hopefully loosen its grip on inhibition and start to be your friend when you're trying to do something really seriously, you know, out of the blue, out of the box, so to say, right? So many things, right? You can design for memory, you can design for discipline, you can design for healthy eating, you can design for healthy lifestyle, you can design for stress, this, that, and everything. This idea that you can nudge your non-conscious brain into activity is all about finding these small yellow lines that can influence your non-conscious brain. Over the last 5-6 years, I've been very, very busy, you know, trying to figure out how to build soft skills in students, right? Because, you know, these soft skills like confidence, like communication skills, like storytelling, emotional intelligence, leadership, right? These are absolutely essential when you're trying to move out of academics and start stepping into the corporate world, the work life, right? Where you don't need to be just impressive, you need to be influential, right? And I explored many things, right? You can do, you know, 1:1 mentoring, you can do psychological coaching, you can, you know, go explore hundreds of places in the world, get familiar with new ideas, new things whatsoever, right? And I think all of it is useful. All of it is useful, right? But I've personally zeroed down on this one single strategy called give our youth the chance to talk with strangers in meaningful conversations. It might sound like a very benign idea, much like those yellow lines, right? But ask our youth, when did they last speak for 20 minutes, 30 minutes to a stranger? They don't. In fact, our whole academic life is about listening, absorption, not about speaking. But speaking is magical, right? Speaking is when you structure your thoughts. Speaking is when listening becomes very important. Speaking is when you want to be empathetic. Speaking is when you want to be spontaneous. Why do you need strangers then? Why not talk to friends? Because you also need that little bit of difficulty, a little bit of discomfort. Otherwise, you'll be talking about, you know, boys and girls in movies and sports and so on and so forth, giggle and everything else. But that's not soft skill building. So the more you kind of speak to strangers, the better it gets. But look at our environments, right? Our schools are so homogeneous. You almost know the kind of people that will be there in a particular school. Look at our friends and families, they're all homogeneous. Look at the societies we live in. They're so homogeneous, right? So how do you build heterogeneity? Go find friends in other cities. Go find friends in other cultures, other countries, right? That's probably the starting point of beginning to have good conversations with strangers. So next time somebody tells you, you know, be careful with strangers, I say go approach them, right? And go talk to them. The more you talk to them, the more these faculties will build in you. Just subtly, non-consciously, gradually, you'll start getting these capacities inside you. Final thought, you know, I mean, I love my conscious brain like everybody else does, right? I mean, it has such abilities to plan and have good intents and, you know, make sense of the world, give meaning to life, right? But if I could, I would put a lot of the energies of my conscious brain in figuring out these non-conscious design tweaks around my environment, right? Something that doesn't require motivation, awareness for my behaviors to change, right? And so, you know, you can chase growth, right? You can go chase growth, but you can also catalyze growth by using non-conscious design. So my invitation to you, right? Go find your yellow lines and grow. Thank you so much for your time and attention.